How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying, what are we studying today? Okay. Daf Nun Gimel, Daf 53 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, your friends. I think Daf 53, right? I think we got up to that. Why not? Okay, it's been hard for me to get all these recordings in. I'm away and there's a lot going on. And so it's been hard. I'm falling a little behind on the recordings. Al Koponim. I think we're here on Daf Nun Gimel Mid Aleph. So today's daf. First, we're going to learn how we know when the punishment is skila, and then we get into Eluin Haniskalin. We get into who are the people that get stoned, and I'll tell you, it gets very Yevamasi. Sanhedrin Yevamis. The next few days are gonna be very kind of Yevamasi. Not the easiest stuff, but Al Koponim. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna start in Daf Nun Gimel Mid Aleph. Sorry, by the way, if the echo's been echoey over here. This is just kind of the Metzias over here, where this is the most shaykh place to record right now. Al Koponim. So we're on Daf Nun Gimel Mid Aleph, about 5 lines into the Amid. Amli Reb Zeir LaAbayi. So Reb Zeir says to Abayi, Sharon is calling Deloi Ksiv Beuskila the Gamri Me Oiv V'Yidoni B'Mai Gamri. That okay. So as we're going to see later on today's daf, in the Mishnah that we're going to get up to soon, Eluhin Haniskalin, there's lots of people who are chayiv skila. There's lots of things you can do to get yourself stoned. Be careful. Now, some of them say explicitly, it says explicitly in the pasuk, like Virog Muoso, Kol Ha'am, or whatever it is, right? It says by Ovi Yidoni, for example, it says but Evan Yirgemu Osam Dmei Bum, pretty explicit. You're going to chuck stones at them. So that's pretty explicit. But there are other places where it doesn't say explicitly that the punishment is skila. So and as we're going to see, right? So how do we know then that the punishment is in fact skila if it doesn't explicitly say that the punishment is skila? So says the Gemara again. So Reb Zeir says to Abayi, Sharon is calling. So all of the other instances of skila, deloi ksiv behu skila, that it doesn't explicitly say by them that the punishment is skila, the gamri me oiv v'yid'eni, that we learn out that the template from which, or the basis, from which we learn that these punishments are skila is from ov v'yid'oni. Let's go weiter. What's ov v'yid'oni? It's like necromancy or something like that. Dennis, what's necromancy? It's like some kind of hocus pocus kind of stuff. If you do that, then you get skila. B'mai gamri. Where do we learn it from them? B'mos yumasu gamri or b'dmeim bum gamri. The thing is, if we look at the pasuk by Ov Yidoni, it says, V'isha, I'm reading the pasuk, V'isha o isha, a man or a woman, ki yiyeh boim ov o yidoni, if they do Ov Yidoni, mos yumasu, okay, the chayiv misa, but even yirgmu osam, stone them, dmeim bum, their blood is theirs. So in that pasuk it says mos yumasu, in that pasuk it also says dmeim bum. So the shaila is it that whenever we see in a pasuk mos yumasu, we say, oh, what's mos yumasu? Well, by Ov Yidoni, it was skila, so here also it's skila. Or is it that whenever we see Dmei and Bum, we say, oh, it says Dmei and Bum over here, it also said Dmei and Bum by Ov Yidoni, therefore it's talking about skila. Kilu. Right, what's sort of the hook? Is the hook mos yumasu, or is the hook Dmei and Bum? That's the shaila. Okay, so again, b'mai gamri, what's the hook? What's the gzeira shava? Is it b'mos yumasu? Do we say, oh, it says b'mos yumasu in both places, gamri? Or b'dmeim bum gamri? Or is it that, oh, it says dmeim bum in both places, therefore it's skila omerle, b'dmeim bum gamri. So Abaye says that the hook is dmeim bum. That wherever it says dmeim bum, we're talking about skila. De'i b'mos yumasu, because if we would say that the hook is mos yumasu, well then, well then what do I do with Tmei and Bum? Well, in fact, the Gemara, Tmei gamri, mos yumasu lamali. Okay, fine. Meaning we're saying, well, it must be that Demei and Bum is the hook, because if it's Mos Yumasu, then what's the deal with Demei and Bum? Why don't we say Fakert? If you say it's Demei and Bum is the hook, well then what do you do with Mos Yumasu? That's no problem. Kedetanya. What we do with Mos Yumasu is like we learn in a Braise. Mos Yuma Samake. Reitzeachu Azoi. So it says, so what do you do with Mos Yumasu? So it says by murder. It says by murder, Mos Yumas Hamake, that the murderer is himself killed. Rotzeachu, because he's a murderer. Ainli elo b'misak zuva bo. Okay, so we know that punishment is saif. Is we slice off the head with the sword. So all I know is saif. Minayin she'im. How do we know that if saif is not shaykh, that if for whatever they can't find the sword or something, but they could find a sledgehammer, so then you kill him however you can. I don't know exactly. So would you use a sledgehammer? Is that the idea? I don't know. It says most you must. Ye shall surely die. So we said, well, if we learn that from Demei and Bum, then what do you do with Mos Yumasu? What you do with Mos Yumasu is that's where we learn that like Kilu, if it's not shaykh to execute with the correct execution, then you can use an alternative execution. So that's what we learn out from Mos Yumasu. And Demei and Bum is the hook to teach that wherever it says Demei and Bum, we could hook it back to Over Yidoni to say that it's skila. Omer le Rav Ach midifti le Ravina. Says Rav Ach midifti to Ravina. Ve'i b'mos Yumasu gamre Maika kashile. What does Rashi say? But it says Rashi Omer le Rav Ach midifti le Ravina. Ha do Omer Reb Zera. That which Reb Zera says labai b'mai gamre. My hava kashile le Reb Zera. You have a gamre b'mos Yumasu. Right. So the Rashi says that what the Gemara is asking is, what would Reb Zera's issue have been were we to have learned out from Mos Yumasu? What would the problem have been? Right, we're learning out from Demei and Bum. And what would have been the problem if we say that we're learning out from Mos Yumasu? So ilema Eishes Ish kokashele. Well, maybe the problem is Eishes Ish, because we know that Eishes Ish, the punishment is chenek. And if we say that the hook to skila is Mos Yumasu, well then that would be then what? If we say the hook is Mos Yumasu, but it says Mos Yumasu by Eishes Ish, and yet we know that it's not skila, right? So if we say that the trouble was with Eishes Ish, where it says, what does it say? I don't know what it says. What does it say by Eishes Ish? I guess it says Mos Yumas, whatever, I don't know. Mos Yumas Hanoi Vanoefis, maybe. Anyways, Mos Yumsu. Anyways, so if you say the hook is Mos Yumasu, so then you would get into trouble by Eishes Ish, because Eishes Ish, the punishment is chenek, even though it says Mos Yumasu. So ilem Eishes Ish kakashele lemeis, right? That lemeisi v'lemigmar Mos Yumas me'ov v'yidoni malhalim b'skila afkan b'skila, right? And therefore the trouble would be, how come we're saying that Eishes Ish is chenek? After all, it says Mos Yumas by Eishes Ish, and I would think therefore you would hook it back into Ov v'yidoni and say it's b'skila. Why are we saying b'chenek? But says the Gemara, that wouldn't actually be a problem, because mida amar achmana arusa b'skila, from the fact that we know that in arusa is biskila, specifically a nari marasa is biskila, that implies that just a regular Eishes Ish would not be biskila. Michlal de nesua lav biskila. So therefore, we know that, right, we assume that nesu, right, Eishes Ish is chenek. Now, if you're going to say that, well, if we say that the hook is Mos Yumas, right, so then that would be problematic, because then I would say that Eishes Ish is skila. No, I wouldn't say that Eishes Ish is skila, because we know that specifically a nari rasa is biskila, implying that a regular Eishes Ish is not biskila, and therefore I wouldn't actually think that it is biskila. So what's the problem? Ve'ela maka aviv imo kakashale. Okay, but then maybe we would say that the problem is Maka Aviv Imo, because Maka Aviv Imo is also chenek, and yet it says Mos Yumas, and therefore I would think that it's Beskila. So Lemesiv Ligmar Me Ovi Yidoni, that we should learn from Ovi Yidoni to say skila. But the Gemara says no. They're also I wouldn't actually think skila, because I would say Adigami Ovi Yidoni Ligmar Me Eishasish, because now we get into an interesting territory where, of course, we have Ovi Yidoni where it says Mos Yumasu, and that's skila, but we also have Eishasish which says Mos Yumas, and we know that that's chenek. So now we run into trouble because we have 2 places where it says Mos Yumas. In one place it is chenek, in the other place it is Eishasish. It is skila. So now the thing is, so now you get to Maka Aviv Imo where it says Mos Yumas, and we assume that the punishment there is chenek, but now I would say, wait, but it says Mos Yumas. Maybe we should learn out from Ovi Yidoni to say that it's beskila, not bechenek. To which the Gemara says that's also not actually a problem, because look, it says Mos Yumas by Maka'ov V'imo. The thing is, it also says Mos Yumas by Eishasish, and it also says Mos Yumas by Ovi Yidoni. The thing is, Eishasish is chenek, Ovi Yidoni is skila, and now we're trying to figure out Maka'ov V'imo, what's the punishment? Well, if we're not sure if it's chenek or if it's skila, so then you have to go by the more lenient one, which is chenek. So also, I would not assume that Maka'ov V'imo would be beskila. I would still assume it's bechenek. Right? So again, Ligmu Me'eshasish. Where am I? So again, I'm backing up. Well, if the problem is going to be Maka'ov V'imo, that we know that the punishment is chenek, but it says Mos Yumas, so Lemesiv Ligmar Me'ovi Yidoni, and we should learn from Ovi Yidoni that it's skila, not chenek, but Adagami Me'ovi Yidoni, Ligmu Me'eshasish. But if it's between, hey, by Maka'ov V'imo, should we learn out from Ovi Yidoni to say skila, or from Eishasish to say chenek? Well, well, if it's between skila and chenek, you can't be stringent, you have to be lenient to say that it's chenek, not skila. So again, we would maintain that Maka'ov V'imo is bechenek. So therefore, what is the harm in saying that Mos Yumas is the hook? Because ultimately, what trouble would it lead to? Well, the answer is Amarle. So I guess Abaye answers, Sharon is Gufayu Kokashale. Well, the problem is all of the other skila examples. If you were to say that the hook is Mos Yumas, and then we're saying that basically wherever it says Mos Yumas, it's skila, well then I would ask the question, wait, why is it skila? Maybe I should know from Eishasish to say that it's chenek. Right? So where am I? Gufayu Kokashale, Dibi Mos Yumas Game, Adigam Ovi Yidoni Ligma Me'eshasish. Because if the hook is Mos Yumas, if the hook is Mos Yumas, so then basically every single time where we try to learn skila, because it says Mos Yumas, we'll say, wait, why don't we learn it from Eishasish where it says Mos Yumas and it should be chenek? So therefore, we wouldn't be able to learn out skila from Mos Yumas, because we'd always be asked, well, why not say it's chenek? Therefore, it must be that we're learning out from Dmeim Bom. So basically what we learn is that whenever it says Dmeim Bom by a capital punishment, it is skila. When it says Dmeim Bom, it's skila. Azoy. Now we get to the next Mishnah. This Mishnah is going to get a little bit Yevomisi, Sanhedrin Vomis. Says the Mishnah, Ve'elu einan iskolin. The following people get stoned. Habo alo aim, if one sleeps with their mother. If a boy sleeps with his mother. Val eisha sa'ov, or his father's wife. It sounds like Yevomis, huh? Val hakala, or one's daughter-in-law. Val zchur, or a boy who sleeps with a boy. Val behema, or a boy who sleeps with an animal. Va'isha mavia is a behema, or a woman who brings an animal into her. V'magadef, a blasphemer. Va'oved avodas kochavim, somebody who worships the getchkis. Va'nosin mizar lemolech, somebody who transfers his child to Molech. I think it's a shaila of what it means, through a fire, between fires, but some kind of thing that is not recommended. Uval over yidoni, and somebody who practices, I think, necromancy, some kind of hocus pocus. V'machalas haShabbos, chilul Shabbos. V'machal v'imo, somebody who curses his father and mother. V'abal nair marasa, somebody who sleeps with a nair marasa. V'amesis, somebody who convinces somebody else to do avodah zarah. V'madiach, somebody who convinces an entire city. An irani dachas, somebody who's madiach, an irani dachas. V'machashef, a machshefer, some kind of sorcerer or witch. Uvensaru umar, and this rebellious child who we're going to learn all about in the next parak. The next parak is called Vensaru umar. Habala aim, so someone who sleeps with his mother, chayav aleh mishum aim, so he's chayav for sleeping with his mother, mishum eishes of, and assuming that, also because of eishes of. Yeah, also because of eishes of. Okay, now I think I get it. I think it would be eishes of even if they're no longer married, I think. Okay. I think I might be wrong, but anyways, you'd be chayiv certainly if they're married, then you'd be chayiv for aim and for eishes of. Rabbi Yehuda Omer eino chayiv ela mishum ha'aim bilvad. Rabbi Yehuda says that you're only chayiv for aim, and that's going to be this machlokes is going to be a big. I think it's basically, it's going to be the rest of today's daf. I believe. I think it's going to be the entire Gemara, and also then we're going to continue with it tomorrow. It's a big sugya. So Rabbi Yehuda says no, you'd only be chayiv for aim, not for eishes of. This is going to be tricky. We're going to have to hot cup. Fine. Habal eishes of. Okay, somebody sleeps with his father's wife. Chayav mishum eishes of. So he's chayav for eishes of, but also mishum eishes ish. Also because of eishes ish, she's married. She's a married woman. Bein b'chayav of bein la'achar misasov. Now this is whether your father's alive, right? Whether your father's alive, whether your father is gestorben in Wellwood. Okay, which is why I think that it might also apply to your mother, even if they're no longer married. Right? Meaning we're saying even if he's dead, but what if they're divorced? It could be that there's no difference there. Abal kalaso, somebody sleeps with his daughter-in-law. Chayv mishum kalaso, so he's chayv because of his daughter-in-law, mishum eishes ish, but also because of eishes ish, because she's a married woman. Ben b'chayv b'no, whether your son is alive, ben la'achar misas b'no, whether your son is gestorben and in Wellwood, ben ben eris and ben ben nisuin, whether they were engaged, whether they were fully married. Azoy. Okay, so now Givaldik. Okay, here we go. Now, as I said, the Gemara is going to be discussing the machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda about when one sleeps with their mother. It's going to be a little tricky. Whatever, you just gotta focus. Go slowly. We might. What was it called? We're gonna have to push through the mush at some point. Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. Anyways, or maybe not. Anyways, so we said that somebody sleeps with his mother, so he's chayiv for aim, but also for eishes of. Rabbi Yehuda says nit, you only chayiv for aim, not because of eishes of. So Tanya, now said the Gemara initially quotes a brisa, and it says in the brisa, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, im lo hoisa imo reuya le'aviv eino chayiv ela mishum aim bilvad. So when Rabbi Yehuda says that he's only chayiv for aim, not for eishes aviv, he's only chayiv for aim, that's in a scenario where his mother wasn't fit to be married to his father in the first place. And therefore, since they weren't actually married, therefore she wasn't actually his father's wife, and therefore he's only b'chayiv for sleeping with his mother, but not for his father's wife, because since they weren't shaykh to get married in the first place, it's not actually a marriage, and therefore the whole father's wife thing is irrelevant. So again, Tanya, we learned about Rabbi Yehuda, or says Rabbi Yehuda, if his mother wasn't shaykh to his father, to be married to his father, so therefore he's only going to be chayiv for sleeping with his mother, but not for eishes ha'ov. And that is why Rabbi Yehuda says that he's only chayiv for aim, not for eishes ha'ov. Now the interesting thing is, the Chacham said you would also be chayiv for eishes ha'ov. So we have to understand what would be the scenario where there would be such a machlokus, where the Chacham would say that he is chayiv for eishes ha'ov, and the Chacham would say that, and Rabbi Yehuda would say not. But anyways, so my eina re'uyaloi, what does it mean that his mother is not fit to be married to his father? Well, Well, if we say that it's talking about a scenario where his mother and his father, if they would be married to each other, it would be a chiyuv kares or a chiyuv misas bezdin, right? For example, one of these relationships in the Mishnah where you'd be chayiv skila for, right? Well, in that case, it would be no marriage at all. But Mechlal derabanan savri afagav de'ena ru'uya loy haleis lekidushim begavla. But how could there be a machloikes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda there, right? Rabbi Yehuda is saying they only chai for aim, not for Eishes of, because they were never actually married in the first place, because it's a chiyuv skila, it's a chiyuv misas bezdin or a chiyuv kares. But then how could the Chacham argue and say that you would be chai for Eishes of? There's no marriage there. So that can't be Ella chai ve'lavin azoy. Rather, the thing is that there was a chiyuv lav. For example, grusha lekoyin hedget, right? For example, his mother is a grusha and his father is a koyin. So therefore they're not allowed to marry each other. Now the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is there actually kiddushin? Is kiddushin chal on chai ve'lavin? So machlokes from Yevomis. Rabbi Akiva says kiddushin is not chal on chai ve'lavin. So we're saying Rabbi Yehuda holds like his Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva, that kiddushin is not chal, therefore they were never married, and therefore he's only going to be chai for aim, he's not going to be chai for Eishes of, because she was never his wife. The Chacham, however, hold that kiddushin is going to be chal for chai ve'lavin. Kiddushin is chal, and therefore they were married, and therefore he's going to be chai not just for aim, but ochit for Eishes ha'ov. So again, El Chai Ve'lam, Rabbi Yehuda Savar like Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva the Omar, who says, Ein Kiddushin Tovsin B'Chai Ve'lavin, that Kiddushin is not shaykh, according to Rabbi Akiva, when it comes to Chai Ve'lavin, therefore they were never married, and Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, and that's why he's only B'Chai for aim, not for Eishes Ha'av. Most of Rabbi Shaya, however, Rabbi Shaya asks a kasha. Isser mitzvah ve'isser Kiddusha choletzes v'misyabemis. That, somebody passes away, no children, the brother marries the widow, so yibum, of course. What if between the brother and the widow there was an isser mitzvah or an isser kedusha, which we'll have to explain what those are? Cholzos v'lo misyabmos, so they do chalitza, they do not do yibum. You don't do yibum in that case when there's an isser mitzvah or isser kedusha. In those cases, there's no yibum, they do chalitza instead. But they do have to do chalitza. But it's not like they're off the hook, right? Of course, the first Mishnah in Masechta Yevomis talks about all these scenarios where you don't even have to do chalitza. Here you would have to do chalitza. So Isser Mitzvah Shniyas Midivrei Sofim, okay, so when we talk about Isser Mitzvah between them, it would be Shniyas Larayis for Ein Imo, for example, right? The Shniyas Larayis, which are also Midivrei Sofim, Midrabanon. Why do Isser Mitzvah? Why do they call it Isser Mitzvah? Mitzvah l'shmoya divrei chacham, because it's a mitzvah to listen to the words of the sages. Isser Kedusha, what's an Isser Kedusha? Almana l'kohen gadol, for example, right? These lavin. For example, a widow to a kohen gadol, gushvachlut to the kohen hedget, these lavin. Why do we call it Isser Kedusha? Dechsiv kedoshim yilu lekechem, because it says that they have to be, by the Kehanim, they have to be particularly holy, and that's why they don't, not the Almon and the Kohen Gadol, not Grusha V'Chalutz the Kohen Hedget. Alright, fine. V'tani Allah, and we taught on this, Brisa, I guess, yeah. V'tani Allah, we taught about it. Rabbi Yehuda Machlif. Rabbi Yehuda would push it, switch them around. That Isser Mitzvah is Almon and the Kohen Gadol, Grusha V'Chalutz the Kohen Hedget, and Isser Kedusha is Shniyas Midivrei Sofim. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda switch it around. But what do we see? He would switch it around, but we said both by Isser Mitzvah and by Isser Kedusha, we said Cholzos v'lo misyabmos. You have to do Chalitza. Now that's odd. Rabbi Yehuda is saying that he says that, that Isser Mitzvah is a reference to Amon l'kohen gadol gush v'achlutz l'kohen hedget. Okay, fine. Those are lavin. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying that when between, let's say the brother is the kohen gadol, and she's obviously an almana, so that's a lav, and Rabbi Yehuda is saying that cholzos, you have to do chalitza. Now, if it was an arayis, wait, what? No, but if Rabbi Yehuda really holds like Rabbi Akiva, that in Isser Lav, Kiddushin isn't Shaykh, well then they wouldn't have to do, right, it's considered like an Arayas, and you wouldn't have, Kiddushin isn't Shaykh, then you wouldn't have to do Chalitza either, right? Like we know from the first Mishnah in Yevamis, that when there's an Arayas between the brother and the widow, you don't have to do anything. Yibum isn't Shaykh B'chlal, you don't even have to do Chalitza. So if we're saying that according to Rabbi Yehuda, that he holds like Rabbi Akiva, that Kiddushin is not tofes by an Isser Lav, well then how does it make sense that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that by Yibum, Amanu Kohen Gadol Gushvachlusa V'Kohen Edja would have to do Chalitza? Chalufeu demachlif a Chalitza boya. Rabbi Yehuda simply just switches around what's Isser Mitzvah and what's Isser Mitzvah and what's Isser Kedusha. He switches it around, but ha-chalitza baya. But he would still say that you have to do chalitza. Even Amar l'kohen gadol, kusha v'chutz l'kohen etchet, v'isagad aitech, if it enters your mind, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Akiva svirlei, the Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, michdei chai ve'lavin, Rabbi Akiva chai ve'kreises domi. That chai ve'lavin, according to Rabbi Akiva, are considered the same as chai ve'kreises, that there's no kiddushin b'chlal. The chai ve'kreises, and when it comes to chai ve'kreises, lav b'nei chalitza v'ibnenu, they're completely not shaykh at all to Yibum, they wouldn't have to do Chalitza. So why are we saying that they have to do Chalitza? So the Dvar Tanakama Ka'amar V'leilo Svirle. Look, Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, and that in Isser Lav, a Kiddushin is not Tofes B'chlal, and therefore in Isser Lav, Kiddushin is not Tofes at all. And that is why, so that is why you would say that if you sleep with your mother who is an Isser Lav to your father, so then you only chai for aim, not for Eishes Ha'av, because there was no Kiddushin there. What about over here by the Isser Mitzvah and Isser Kedusha, where he's saying that they have to do Chalitza? He was just responding to the Tanakama, that's all. The Tanakama said that Isser Mitzvah is Shnius La'arayis, and Isser Kedusha is Amar L'Kohen Gadol Gushvachlusa L'Kohen Edget. He was saying, and that you have to do Chalitza. He was saying, look, personally, I say by Amar L'Kohen Gadol Gushvachlusa L'Kohen Edget, there's no Chalitza, because it's not Shaykh B'chlal. However, according to you, that you say that there is Chalitza, FYI, I think that you got it backwards. I think that Isser Mitzvah is really Amar L'Kohen Gadol Gushvachlusa L'Kohen Edget, and Isser Kedusha is Shnius La'arayis. But really, he doesn't agree that Chalitza would be Shaykh, because he says Isser Lavin, like Rabbi Akiva, there's no Kiddushin Tofes B'chlal. Well, Chaver, my brain is definitely getting mushier. Okay, so in our Mishnah, we had a machlokes between the Tanakame and Rabbi Yehuda with regard to somebody who sleeps with his mother. Are you chayav for aim and Eishes Ha'av, or just for aim? Tanakama says aim and Eishes Ha'av. Rabbi Yehuda says just aim. Now we explained that just now as saying that it's specifically that it's talking about where the mother was not shaykh to the father, and the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is how you understand chayve lavin. Is kiddushin tofes or not? The Chacham say it is tofes. Rabbi Yehuda says it's not tofes. Fine. Now we're going to have a different version where actually it's talking about where the marriage between the mother and the father was a proper marriage, and still Rabbi Yehuda says that you're only going to be chayiv for aim and not for Eishes Ha'av. He also Rabbi Yitzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Tani Kiditnan, he taught just like in our Mishnah, no mention of anything about not being roy to one another. No. He taught like our Mishnah, that's simply, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're chayiv for aim, you're not chayiv for Eishes Ha'av, even though they were married. Rabbi Yitzchak, Tani Kiditnan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, Eino chayiv elam shuma aim bilvad. You only chayiv for the mother, not for the Eishes Ha'av. V'tayim amai. How come? That's the big shayla. We're going to see three different possibilities. The first two are rejected, the last one is Rav. Omer Abaye says, Abaye to Omer Kra, because the pasuk says, Imcha hi. The pasuk says, right, what does the pasuk say? It says, Ervas avicha ve'ervas imcha lo sigale, imcha hi lo sigale v'sa. So what do you learn out from imcha hi? It means that according to Rabbi Yehuda, mishum imo ata mechayvo, you're only mechayev for aim, ve'i ata mechayv mishum eishes of, you're not chayev for eishes of. You're only chayev for aim, not for eishes of. El me'ato, or Frekti Gemara, a very sharp kasha. Frekti Gemara. El me'ato, another pasuk says, I'm going to read the pasuk, Ervas eishes avicha lo yisgale. The erva of your father's wife do not reveal. Ervas avicha he. It is the erva of your father. Now that's interesting. Did you catch that? Let's read that again. That pasuk. Ervas eishes avicha, the wife of your father. Who's that? Well, let's just say it's your mother, the wife of your father. And there it says, Ervas avicha he, which sounds like you would davka be chayiv for Ervas avicha, davka for eishes ha'av. Now that's weird. Because on the one hand, right, we're saying, on one hand, we said that if you sleep with your mother who's married to your father, let's just say, so on the one hand we're saying, imchahi, to say that you'd be chayiv for aim, but you'd be potter for eishes ha'av. But then we have this other pasuk that's saying, ervas avicha he, and based on that approach, we should say that you davka be chayiv for eishes ha'av and be potter for aim. So from the first pasuk we're saying you're potter for eishes ha'av. The second pasuk we're saying you're potter for aim. So that's weird. Basically, if you sleep with your mother who's married to your father, you shouldn't be chayiv for anything. That can't be. Ervas eishes avicha lo yisgale. It says, do not reveal the erva of the wife of your father. Ervas avicha hi. So based on that approach, mishum eishes of ata mechayv ve'i ata mechayv mishum imo. I would say that you'd be chayiv for eishes of, you would not be chayiv for imo. But now that's weird, because ella imo shehi eishes aviv koyachom amayidla. As I explained a minute ago, that, well, if you have a scenario where your mother is married to your father, well then from the first pasuk we would exclude eishes of, from the second pasuk we would exclude aim. Basically you would be off the hook, right? Koyachom amayidle. Look to this pasuk and exclude this one. Look to that pasuk and exclude the other one. You're completely off the hook. But that can't be, because hashta imo she'ena eishes aviv. If your mother is not your father's wife, and I think that's specifically talking about a situation of ones, for example, because I think that if they were ever married, then she would be considered eishes aviv, because you said even after he dies or whatever. But anyways, if you have your mother who is not considered eishes aviv, so it's just your mother, so of course you could be mechayev. Of course you'd be chayev for aim. And if you have eishes aviv, let's say your father's married to another woman, so then if you sleep with her, eishes aviv she'ena imo, she's not your mother, mechayev, you'd be chayev for eishes aviv. So if she's only your mother, you'd be chayiv for aim. If she's only eishes aviv, you'd be chayiv for eishes aviv. But imo she eishes aviv. But now, if it's not just your mother, but your mother who's also your father's wife, lo mechayiv klal. How could it be that now, where it seems to be upping the ante, it seems to be more significant, not just your mother, but your mother who's also your father's wife, potter? How could that be? Visu, and more so, the Rabbanan Nami oksiv imchahi. What does the Rabbanan do with imchahi? Right? So we're saying imchahi means that you're only chayiv for aim and not for eishes of. Well, that's going to Rabbi Yehuda. What do the Chacham say? What do they do with imchahi? Okay, so ela ahumi boile lichdov shisha beder of idi. Okay. Well, according to the Chacham, it would be used for like Rav Shisha Beder of Idi says, and we're going to get to Rav Shisha Beder of Idi tomorrow. Rabbi Yehuda nami ahu. Now the thing is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, also he would explain it like Rav Shisha Bred of Idi Imchahi. So rather, we'll get that. We'll get to there tomorrow, right before we get to the next Mishnah. Okay, fine. So Abayi wanted to just say, look, it comes from Imchahi, and it's saying that you're chayiv for aim, not for eishes av. But we saw that was tricky. El Omer Rav Acha Bred of Ika. Rather says Rav Acha Bred of Ika. Omer the pasuk says ervasa. What does it say? It says, Ervas avicha ve'ervas imcha l'sigale imcha'i lo sigale ervaso. Mishum erva achas atamachayva ve'atamachayva mishum shtei arayis. That he's only chayiv for one erva, not for two, and therefore if he sleeps with his mother who's also married to his father, so he'd be chayiv for aim, you would not be chayiv for eishes of, because you're only chayiv for one erva, not for two. Elameata. But But one second. Ervas kaloscha le'sigale. It says in the pasuk, don't sleep with your daughter-in-law. Eishes bincha hi. She's the wife of your son. Lo skale ervasa. Do not reveal ervasa. So now, based on this approach, we would say that Rabbi Yehuda would say ervasa would mean that you don't be chayiv for kaloscha, you wouldn't be chayiv for eishes ish. But Achinami, would we say the same thing? Right, as I just said, mishum erva achas atam chayvo. So we're saying from ervasa we would say that the father-in-law would only be chayiv, or they would only be chayiv for ervasa. Erva achas atam chayvo. You don't be chayiv once. V'atam chayv mishum shtei arayis. You wouldn't be chayiv for also eishes ish. But we learn in our Mishnah Baal Kalaso that somebody sleeps with his daughter. Not just Mishum Kalaso, but also Mishum Eishes Ish. That you're chayiv both for Kalascha, for your daughter-in-law, as well as for Eishes Ish. Bein b'chayiv b'no, bein la'achar misas b'no. Whether your son is alive, whether your son is dead. V'lo polig Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda doesn't argue. He agrees. Well, seemingly, he doesn't argue. So Kilu, it sounds like by Kalascha, Rabbi Yehuda would agree that he'd be chayiv for kalascha and also for eishes ish. But it says ervasa, and if we're saying that when it says ervasa, Rabbi Yehuda says it's limited to one, well then it doesn't add up because he doesn't say that by kalascha. So Ella, rather, kevan dechad gufa hu avagav de trei isuri ninu ksiv ervasa. Rather, what do you have to say? That when it comes to kalascha, that even though, again, I'm reading that again, since it's one person, your daughter-in-law, even though, sure, there's two isurim, she's your daughter-in-law, but also an eishes, but nonetheless, it's one person, it's hers. So ksiv ervasa. So also by your mother, even though it's your mother and also your father's wife, still, even though it's one person, even though it's two isers, ksiv ervasa, it says ervasa. Okay, fine. Ella, on my Rave, rather says Rave. Okay, so here comes Rave, and this is going to be also, it's going to lead to our discussion tomorrow as well. We're going to continue this discussion, it's a big one. Ella, my Rave, rather says Rove, Kasav Rabbi Yehuda holds. Okay, the pasuk says Ervas Avicha. Now, what does the pasuk say? It says Ervas Avicha. Okay, ve'ervas Imcha lo segale imchahi. So when it says Ervas Avicha, what's that talking about? That's talking about your father's wife. Could be your mother, could not be your mother, but that includes both. It talks about your father's wife and also potentially your mother. Let's say again, Ervas Avicha, Zo Eishes Avicha, that's the wife of your father. Umaisla b'gzeir shava, and we learn that from Gzeir Shava, we're going to learn that tomorrow, the Gzeir Shava. Umashma bein Eishes Aviv she imo, and that's your father's wife, whether it's your mother, bein Eishes Aviv she'ena imo, whether it is not your mother. Imo she'ena Eishes Aviv minayin, what about your mother who is not your father's wife? So Talmud Lomar, therefore it says, Ervas imcha lo sigale. Well, then it says Ervas imcha lo sigale. Okay. Don't sleep with your mother. Okay, so from Ervas avicha lo sigale, we learn out your father's wife. Now that might be your mother, might not be your mother. And how do I know your mother? That's from Ervas, that's from the other one. That's from Ervas imcha lo sigale. Now when it says imchahi, what's that coming to teach? So it's interesting. When it says imchahi, imchahi is actually reflecting back on Ervas Avicha, the scenario where she's both your mother as well as your father's wife, and to say that in that case, it's reflecting back to there and say that you'd only be chayiv for imcha, not for eishes of. Imchahi mishum imo atam mechayvo, ve'atam mechayv mishum eishes of. You're only going to be chayiv for imo, not for eishes of. Chaver, we're going to stop here for now. What time is it? Yeah, it's getting late. We're going to stop here for now, and we're going to stop here for now, and we're going to pick up Amir tomorrow. Wow, tomorrow's going to be a big daf. Tomorrow is going to be a big old daf. Peace out.